slides.
Okay, thank you so much everybody for being here tonight. I'm excited to see so many faces, a lot of faces I don't know. I'm sorry I haven't gotten to meet everybody. My name is Jody. I'm currently serving as Vice President of the Children's Media Association Bay Area Chapter. And it's been a pleasure. It's been a couple years now. We started really informally. We became an official chapter in November. We came out as a chapter in a town hall event in San Francisco. We've had a couple of things since then. This is our second event here in the South Bay, and we're going to always do our best to kind of rotate all of these through the expansive Bay Area. For those of you who are not members of the Children's Media Association Bay Area chapter yet, I would highly encourage you to become a member. Right now, if you join, it's half the price for the first year as a founding member, so it's a huge deal. Becoming a member gets you access to job boards, you get access to each other, to these events. There'll be events that we're partnering with other people in the future where you'll have free or discounted entrance to those events. So a lot of really great reasons to become a member. And just to give you a little teaser, we're planning on having what we're informally calling a strategic planning meeting, either at the end of April or the beginning of May, where we really love to hear from everybody about what they want from this chapter, and probably more importantly, to recruit some volunteers for some positions, whether big or small. We really want to broaden the team. We want to broaden the offerings, and we'd love to have everybody on the team in some capacity. So keep your eyes peeled for announcements about that. In May, we're planning on going to Maker Faire together, so that's another upcoming event. And then in June, we're planning another event, likely a field trip, a little TBD at this point. But just to give you a sense of, we're starting to plot out the calendar for the next 9 to 12 months. We're looking for a variety of educational, social, networking, field trip type events, so please stay tuned. I think the list is being passed around. Awesome. So please sign in if you weren't able to register or if you're not a member so that we can stay in touch. If you have questions about how to become a member, please see Donna or Susie when you put your hands up. Who else would know? Elizabeth will know, myself, a lot of people. Just find somebody and
I've
say,
got my computer.
how do I become a member?
If you want to do it now.
And we'll get you hooked up again, 50% off, so it's a big deal if you sign up now. So thank you again for being here. Tonight's event is all about toy trends, both in physical toys. We'll probably touch on children's media as well in some capacity. And we look forward to hearing from this diverse panel. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you to Jennie for moderating this panel. So I'm going to step aside. I'm going to let the experts take over, and I hope you enjoyed this evening. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Jennie Ito. I'm really excited to be here tonight to talk to our panelists. As Mindy said, we have a real diverse group, so I think it's going to be a great conversation. I am especially excited because I don't usually get to talk about toys anymore. So I used to work in the toy industry, but right now I'm at YouTube and I look after the content policies and enforcement for the Kids app. But before that, I had my own toy and play consultancy called The Play Kitchen. And I consulted for a couple of toy companies and children's media companies. So in fact, I met some of you. So yeah, it's just really nice to be able to chat about my favorite topic. And so I wanted to kind of start, actually before I start, I was going to introduce the panelists, but I would like to thank everyone for organizing this event, and especially, I usually have events in San Francisco, and it's really nice to have one down in the South Bay for us who live down here. And I also know that many of you traveled really far tonight and took a while to get here. I know I work in San Bruno, and it took me 2 hours to get here. So I really appreciate everyone making the effort to come all this way so we can have an event here. So thank you very much, and thank you for everyone who organized the event. I know it's a lot of work, and Catherine for hosting. So thank you. So I wanted to start by having the panel introduce themselves, and I would love to kind of hear like what you do, but also a little bit about your journey and kind of how you got to where you are. Do you want to start? Sure.
So my name's Hanna. I'm currently with Habbi. I used to be, in my former life, a strategy consultant. So I worked for a company called Boston Consulting Group. I worked there for over 10 years. I did retail and consumer in Asia, across Beijing, Shanghai, Seoul, and then in San Francisco. And then I decided that 200 hotel nights a year probably wasn't going to work if I was going to have a baby, and I had a baby in 2016. And so I left, and I moved back here, which is where I grew up. At that point, I mean, it's the Bay Area. I have so many classmates who have like started things, and you're just always thinking about stuff. So long story short, I am now an entrepreneur that is both fabulous and crazy all at the same time. So me and a very good friend of mine, we call each other like twins from opposite coasts. I was in the West Coast, she was in the East Coast. We were both at the same company. We like met in Shanghai. So we both, and we're both moms, sort of at similar times. We left and we started this concept called Habbi. It sounds like happy, because that's what our toddlers were saying at the time when we were trying to make a name for ourselves. And we started with a retail concept, really saying that there's no space for toys that is experiential, and there's no inspirational. There's beautiful beauty places, and there's beautiful text places to walk into, but not a place for kids and for toys. And so that's what we built as a pop-up test last year at the Stanford Shopping Center. And so it was an incredible experience. We sort of curated from 2,000 different toys. We started with a set of 25 different brand partners, and the community loved it, and we had so much fun doing it. But as everyone knows, toys are very seasonal. And so we signed a contract for 3 months, and we thought that was a great sort of first step. And we were trying to decide whether we would go retail expansion next or build our own product next. And so we've decided to go build the own product stage. So now we are on this very exciting journey of making our own product. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
So I'm Margaret Garrou. I started my career in New York in children's book publishing at Henry Holt and Company, and then moved to San Francisco and looked for a job in publishing, but there's Chronicle Books and Tricycle, there wasn't much. And so I got lucky and got a job at Peaceable Kingdom, where I worked for over 15 years in as a project manager, product developer. We made paper-based products for kids, everything from stickers to posters to diaries to craft kits. And then toward the last 5 years I was there, we were making cooperative games for kids. That was our really kind of exciting new thing that we did. And then Peaceable Kingdom was sold to Mindware, and the office closed in the Bay Area, and everything moved there. And so since then, that was at the end of 2017, I've been consulting with Little Passports, a subscription-based company in San Francisco, and a third-party seller for Peaceable Kingdom, who was also a toy store, decided they wanted to make products. So I've been consulting with them as a project manager to help them launch their toys. And then I started with the former creative director and production manager of Peaceable Kingdom, a design studio, and we're going to be we're going to be launching new product in June. And so yeah, so I'm excited for new adventures coming along. So
I'm Scott Traylor. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I didn't start off in toys. I kind of ended up there a little later on in my career, but I loved the language of interactivity, and I had this concept of making digital playthings. And long ago, I started a company in Boston called 360 Kid, and one of the first things I did was I made a list of all the companies I wanted to work with. I had my top 5 hits, and some of which maybe many of you would know, like I had Sesame Workshop on there, which was children's television workshop at the time, Nickelodeon, Noggin, Discovery Channel, and Family Communications, which is Fred Rogers' company. After struggling and learning how hard it is to start a business and keep the lights on and feed your family, I, one by one, I had landed those clients and was doing lots of interactive work for them online, mostly in the beginning. And over time, I would create new dream client lists, and they would often include toy companies. And had the wonderful opportunity of doing a lot of work with Hasbro and Disney, a little Fisher-Price in there. And what I started to find, anything that was somewhat digital and may have had a screen, I was often involved with. I had a wonderful, wonderful run working with Pokemon for a while, also had made about 18 different titles for LeapFrog and their Leapster back in the day. Anyway, so I also taught a class, a computer science class on how to make products for children. And still very much involved in it today. I do a lot of advising for startups and mid-stage companies that are interested in making products for kids. A lot of education work in there too. And and that's it.
I'm Gutekunst. I have been in the Bay Area for 5 years and originally moved here to work for LeapFrog. So I have many former colleagues in the audience, which is always friendly and fun to see. I started my career in brand licensing, working on the content side and working on outbound licensing, so partnering with toy companies to get product produced. And when I moved to LeapFrog, I moved to the other side, and it was great to see how best-in-class partners would build their brands like Disney and Nickelodeon and Sesame and a lot of the people that have been mentioned already. And I started to get really involved in digital experiences then, and what fascinated me was how brands would tackle emerging platforms and how they would change their voice and expand it and make sure it was targeted for new audiences and how to stay relevant to a very quickly evolving technology landscape. So I dabbled, after LeapFrog, I dabbled a little bit in online advertising, which was pretty foreign to most people who started and had a full career in kids. I was like, you can do that all the time for the first year I was there. And I went back to toys recently, and I've been at my current role at Creativity and Funfair for the past year. So I lead marketing and business development for a studio that designs toys and launches experiences on different platforms. We recently have been getting closer to Amazon and to Google and designing skills and Google Actions for their platforms, voice assistance platforms, and looking at the future of connectivity for families, really. So I track a lot of how technology influences play and see those trends come through in the toy side as well, and always looking forward to staying ahead of that curve, which is very difficult in a quickly moving trend-based business.
Great. Well, while I was putting these questions together, I was kind of thinking about where does my passion for toys and play really come from? And when I started thinking about it, I think it really stems from all my fond memories. I have a play as a child. And I think it really has to do with all the positive feelings that are kind of associated with that play. So I actually brought a picture of me. I'm not sure if I'm going to have to unlock my computer. Yes. Sorry, I'm using my work computer and it sleeps every couple minutes. Oh, it might. There we go. Yes, here I am, Christmas 1983. Me and my sister, and that is my toy kitchen that I got from Santa. And definitely my favorite toy growing up was this toy kitchen, and I can't tell you how many hours my sister and I spent in there playing restaurant and just like cooking and playing house. And my favorite thing about this is I actually still have it. My parents kept it all these years, and when I had kids, they drove it all the way from Canada down to my house, and that's my son and there's my daughter, and they're both they had just as much fun with it. It's still in my kitchen, and my kids are now 6 and 9, and I see my daughter slowly kind of, growing out of it. It makes me very sad. But I do, it's really cute. She knows that my parents kept it, and so she's asking me if I can keep it for her kids as well. And I mean, this is like one sturdy toy kitchen. It has been through a lot, and we've had it all these years. So I guess I wanted to ask our panelists too if they wanted to kind of share what some of their favorite toys were growing up. And why they think they were so special to them. Don't know if you want to start.
Oh, okay, sure. So I don't know if this will be as heartwarming of an answer. It's interesting. I think now being in the toy industry, I kind of see play and learning all together.
Yeah.
Like play is learning, learning is play. And actually, so for me, I would cite an audio book, which as my favorite toy, because for us, for me and my sister growing up, we were in a immigrant family, and there weren't a lot of toys, but we borrowed from the library this Anne of Green Gables, which is a classic, and so I listened to it every night, and so it is with me from childhood.
Aw, that's
and I
nice.
could at some point memorize like the first chapter. Yeah.
That was heartwarming.
Yeah, that was heartwarming. So, for us, I think, so for us, board games were a big part of, especially as we got a little bit older, of something that we really enjoyed doing with our parents, because they were busy and working and didn't always have a lot of time to sit on the floor and play with us, my sister and me, but we all loved playing the board games. My parents enjoyed it too, and there were tears after I lost. That happened. But these were two of our favorites, Clue and Pictionary. And Pictionary is so funny. Nobody's going to be crying after that, whatever. But I felt like for that 30 minutes or whatever, how long it took, my parents were really engaged, and we were all together, and it was so nice just to have that attention. And so those memories have totally stuck with me, and so I love playing games with my kids too, because I loved playing Thomas Trains or whatever with my kids, but it gets kind of boring, and so the games are like, oh, I can enjoy that too, especially as they get older. So
One thing I'd just jump in, one thing I love so much about Peaceable Kingdom games is that, like, not only you were mentioning board games can be great for intergenerational play, but with the board games you always had different levels. So if you had a child that was younger than the other, so that's why I love playing with my kids, because my 2-year-old or 3-year-old could play with my 5-year-old and still find it challenging and fun. And so that was definitely one of the reasons I was so in love with Peaceable Kingdom games. And I'm sad my kids have outgrown my favorites.
me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
I have a few digital things very early on,
Yes.
which not only are kind of
These are great.
there are stories behind these too. I'm a collector in addition to an enthusiast and a fan of these when they came out. But when electronic football came out by Mattel, that they only made a run of 50,000 units. And a neighbor of mine had one, and during the sleepover, there was no sleeping because we're playing that the whole night. And the next year, Merlin and Simon came out. Most people aren't familiar with Merlin. Oh, did you? Okay. All right,
Remind
good.
us, how did it go? There's some old folks.
That's good. All right. Well, that warms my heart. But Merlin and Simon were introduced at Toy Fair in 1978 together, and then they reran another, I forget, I think it was 120,000 units of Mattel football. And that was a big year in '78, and I often point to it as maybe that was the beginning of digital toys.
What did Merlin do?
Well, it was it would play a pattern, a couple of lights at a time, and you had to follow it. And it would go very, very long if I think it's an 8-bit chip on there, a very early 8-bit chip, so it was 256 minus 1, different combinations kind of thing. And if you could grab that yellow thing over there for me.
Sounded like dance.
What's interesting is I have autographed versions of these two. I've met the inventors, except for Mattel Football. He passed away before I got a chance to meet him. And Merlin was developed by husband and wife, Bob and Holly Doyle, who were astrophysicists at Harvard. And they've sold 5.5 million of those a couple of decades ago.
Wow.
And Simon was invented by a fellow named Ralph Baer, who passed away a couple of years ago in New Hampshire, who is also credited with inventing the television-based video game system. But what is interesting about Simon is that for those who grew up in the area, they may be familiar with Atari, was in the Bay Area. And they came out with this product right here called Touch Me, which nobody knows. It was an individual version of Simon and failed. And I have it, Nolan Bushnell has signed it. But it's so funny about form factor and thinking about audience that Simon is a participatory game. It's a family game. You put it on your coffee table. This No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's an individual thing, and that's sold like hotcakes. Where this one, which came out just a little bit before that one, didn't sell at all.
I was just looking I was thinking my son loves Simon too. Like I played it as a kid, you played it, and now even our kids are playing it still.
And they keep coming up with new versions of it, and part of it is exciting to see, but I've also heard there's like a business reason to do it, to refresh the patent every 7 years or something like that, so that they could keep hold of it instead of it entering the public domain.
Good stuff.
I don't know how true that is. So I hear. So I kind of like toys.
Caitlin's too.
So I have to say, it was hard to come up with toys that I really loved. I had 3 sisters growing up. I'm an identical twin, so someone who was like this far away from me my whole life. And we just played outside and made things up all the time. My father was allergic to pets, so we could not have any pets. So these might scream really girly to you, but what I loved about them was the nurturing factor of having a pet. And I would think I would always buy more of like Littlest Pet Shop type things so that I could really prove to my parents that I really needed a cat. But of course, they waited until the baby came through to get that cat. And she also got a pony, for the record. But yeah, I loved ponies. We had 82 of them. I have to say, so being a twin, like, my parents didn't really buy a lot of toys, but we got a lot of duplicates of things because there were 2 of us, so they had to like buy things that were like easy to like multiply. So lots of ponies.
That's great. Does anyone in the audience want to share a favorite toy they had growing up?
Well, I was thinking of one that we played with people, a lot of people, and it was a very social house, and that was Twister.
That's the one that just came to my mind.
Yeah, and later when I was a modern dancer in San Francisco, I made a giant Twister board and choreographed according to what Twister rules were, and a little bit of, oh, you're the older cousin, you're a little too close for me, you know. They're really interesting, the dynamics that came out of that later on. So yeah, Twister was a great one.
Anyone else want to share their favorite toys?
I loved Speak and Spell.
Oh yeah.
And I loved my Barbies.
I love Barbies too.
I thought I had heard Speak and Spell is coming back. Somebody said that at Toy Fair.
Basic Fun.
Yeah, Basic Fun owns it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Or license, I'm
Oh,
not
like
sure who owns
yeah.
it, but-
Texas Instruments owned it originally. I can't see them giving that up, but.
So I just wanted to share one more story about favorite toys, just kind of in the power of connection with toys. So my son, I mentioned he's 9, and he has this favorite stuffed animal. It's a little bear who wears blue rabbit pajamas. But it's more than just like his favorite toy or a lovey. It's more like an imaginary friend. Like it has a voice and a personality, and he's had this thing since he was 1. And it's been on every vacation with us. Went to preschool every day. We had birthday parties. I can show you a picture here. Here is my son with Roberto. And you see he's dressed up like Roberto. There we are in London last year, Christmas this year. So, even though he's 9, Roberto doesn't come out of the house as much anymore, but he definitely is part of our family. And why I wanted to bring this up is, it's not just my son, it's now my daughter. You can see my daughter there holding Roberto, and she has like such a special connection with this toy, even though it's her brother's. And I wanted to also say that I have a very special connection with the toy because, he's had it for so long, and I find myself, he'll put it on the edge of by the door on the way out, and I'll find myself going, have a good day, Roberto, and then I'm like, what am I doing? I'm talking to the stuffed animal, But I often refer to him as my 3rd child, and another funny story was we went to go see Inside Out. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie, and of course with Bing Bong, the imaginary character, at one point it's kind of fading from Riley's memory, and I remember sitting there during that scene, and I was really concerned my son was going to get really upset, but he was pretty young at the time, so I'm like looking at him, and he brought Roberto was sitting in between us, and I look at him, and he's totally fine, and I look at Roberto, and I just start bawling my eyes out, and he's like, Mommy, what's wrong? It's like completely over his head, but it made me feel so sad because it really represents him as a child, and like his innocence, and all the fears he had and how he would use it to kind of overcome those. And I was just telling Donna, I recently watched the Fred Rogers documentary with him, and when he saw how Fred Rogers treated and talked about Daniel Tiger, I could see like he really, really impacted him. And that's what he does. When he's scared or upset, he talks through Roberto to me. And he's even expressed it just as easier for him to do that. So I just kind of wanted to share that story because it's not just, for kids, it can become like something very special for a family. Yeah.
Well, so I was telling when we did our little exercise, my son, who is now 12, is still a proud lover of his lovey. And it's exactly as you described.
Yeah.
He's totally part of our family. He's traveled all over the world. He's not shy about it.
Yeah.
I love Levy.
Yeah.
I talk about how jealous
I'm glad
I
it's not just
am
me,
about Levy. But anyway, so it doesn't end at 9.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah, he's even asking me like, can I bring him and put him in my locker in high school? And I'm like, let's talk about that when it happens. If I ever get to college, I'm like, sure, but he's thinking ahead. And,
But my son and his friends are still taking them to sleepaway camp.
Oh,
Like,
that makes me
it's
so
not-
happy to hear.
And there's no shame.
Yeah,
That's nice.
love that. That's great.
There is a psychologist at Duke who does a teddy bear study, and it's sort of a longitudinal and how
Wow.
the childhood toy impacts that child's autobiographical memory.
Wow.
The
Oh,
child's
that's
autobiography
interesting.
and then what happens.
So definitely
We have to look that up.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this. So I've been watching The Goldbergs lately. I don't know if anyone else watches that show here. It's set in the 80s. If you grew up in the 80s, it's really great to watch. But the reason I brought it up is because I'm watching it and they do such a great job of like showing all the toys from the 80s and all their props. And it really got me thinking about nostalgic toys, which I know we've kind of already touched upon a little bit here. And how toy companies are really capitalizing on people's love and nostalgia. And I think a lot of it again has to do with this connection that we've been talking about. But I just wondered if any of you or all of you wanted to talk a little bit about why you think nostalgia toys are so popular.
I mean, the kind of like realist of me is they're targeting moms and dads. They're not targeting kids. I think it's an easy marketing. It's a replacement for marketing budget and being able to have brand recognition at the shelf level where someone they recognize that emotional pull that the parent had and they're like, oh, this is easy. They're just going to see the brand. It's going to feel familiar and they're going to want their kids to have it no matter what the experience is.
I think that's really true. It works on me.
It works on me too.
And speaking of trends, we had entered the pop-up having picked, we're in the Silicon Valley, everything's got STEM toys. You go to Toy Fair and there's like 60% of the space is dedicated to STEM toys, and so we had picked a couple that we thought were great. And when we watched all the consumers come into our space and interact, actually they received the least amount of attention. And what everybody loved seeing, and if you like scour Instagram and everybody is totally engaging on, is just beautiful pieces that are physical play. And so whether that's wooden toys or whether that's board games or whether it's just arts and crafts, right? Just like popsicle sticks and pom-poms and glue, those were the things that actually, surprisingly, right, were
That's really interesting.
were things that were the most popular in the store.
Why do you think that is? Like, what is it about it? Do you think that kind of draws people to that?
And of course, people in this panel probably know more because they've seen across the years. My guess from that pop-up experience and as somebody who just observed the parents is that I think unless it's like a very special sort of tech experience, and there are very successful toys in the past, there are too many trendy tech toys that are too hard for people to understand. And when parents want to play with their kids, there's this one that's beautifully marketed. It's very complicated. It has a great story. And it has, really intricate pieces about engineering. And we had such a hard time. We were like building the shop, and they gave us free product, and we were so intimidated by like building it. I just had my second baby. I was like 1 month postpartum. I told my husband, I am not able to put this toy together. You, Mr. Computer Scientist, have to sit down, hear the directions, make these 3 things because we have to put it in the shop tomorrow. And so he did. And I think sometimes people just want to play and just like play outside, like you were saying, right? It's not that complicated.
Yeah, or just play with something they know or that's familiar or simple like this too. Yeah.
And I think there's also a little bit of a backlash against all the screens. And then I also think parents really want to play a lot more with their kids than maybe you know, my parents' generation or whatever, and so they're looking for things that are familiar to them, and that bring back those warm, fuzzy feelings and, you know, creativity. So, yeah.
I don't know much of what to say here related to marketing, other than I know that, you know, some brands are fortunate enough to be evergreen, and there is that nostalgia factor where you grew up with it and you want your kids to have it, and I often think about, well, those kind of things are very, very hard to create. Like, I'm trying to think what kind of characters are like such breakthrough hits now that they might have a chance later, you know, like, and I can think of like Peppa Pig and maybe Paw Patrol, you know, and where are those going to be in like 15 years. But related to this is not so much an answer as it is an observation. I was talking with somebody recently that in a lot of children's rooms there's a bookcase, a bookshelf, and in it you'll probably find Goodnight Moon and Pet the Bunny and all these other evergreen books. And if there's a toy box, you'll find some stuffed animals, and you'll find some blocks, and you might find some plastic Fisher-Price toys. And just recently I realized it's like, well, there is no bookshelf or a toy box for apps. Or YouTube videos.
It's virtual. Yeah.
It makes me wonder, it's like, oh, okay, maybe, because there was a really great article written by a gamer journalist in the last month, who talked about all his favorite games going away because those systems don't work anymore, or he doesn't have the right operating system. And they could be evergreen, like, you know, Mario is, but Mario has had the same problem, and Nintendo invests in making sure that it's always available because it moves product. Anyway, those are just observations.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I was going to talk about one more, you can tell I'm really interested in connection and toys. So I just have one more question about it, because I know that all of you have worked on, you know, either different products or different companies where they encourage connection, like either through the, whether it's with parents or the community. So I was just wondering if you could share the ways in which you've done this and why it's important to you.
I brought it, show and tell.
Yes, I would
if
love
that's
to.
okay.
Yes, great.
So, Peaceful Kingdom, we made an exclusive game for Target. That was, I don't know if you guys have heard of that game. The first time I heard about it was the Obamas said they would sit around the table and do this with their kids. Roses and thorns. What was your rose at the table? What was your thorn? So some game inventors we worked with came up with a Sunny Stormy Day game, and it came with a book, and I've now forgotten this little character's name. But this would go through his day of Max, and he was a little hedgehog, and he had ups and downs, and, you know, disappointments, and then yucky lunch, but he got dessert, and different things happened. And at the end of the day, he talked to his parents about the good, the bad, and then what he was looking forward to. And so in the game, we included, there's a simple game, this was for 3+, a simple like matching game, but then we also included these little tokens, your little heart pouch, and you would pass it around the family, and you would draw a token, and you would say maybe your happy thing of the day and your not so happy, and then what you're looking forward to. And we play tested with a lot of families who said it like totally changed their conversation with their kids, because they would share, the parents would share, which was unusual to tell your child, like, oh, I was really disappointed at work today because something didn't go well or whatever. And they also said it was a really good chance, and this is what our goal was, for kids to talk about their disappointments. Because, you know, parents don't always want to hear the negatives, like, but the looking forward to would then kind of like, that was today and that disappointment happened, and we will acknowledge it and talk about it, and then moving along, you know, things, there's always tomorrow. So this was kind of near and dear to our heart. So that's the reason that one.
Thank you for bringing that to share.
Can I share something?
Sure.
The David Kelly and the IDEO company does that with big executives. At the end of the day, the group always does, I like, I wish, I wonder.
Oh,
And we
that's
do
nice.
that at the D-Tech High School here too. So that's
nice.
design thinking. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And I know that empathy was one of your values when you were choosing toys. I wonder if you could talk a little bit to that.
Yeah, so one of the things that we put into our store as part of the design, we commissioned a local artist. She's so talented. And we had these 9 values, everything from empathy to worthiness and global citizenship and self-care and things that besides just reading, writing, and language arts and things like that, and math, that we thought represented the values that, you know, the modern parent and the intentional parent wants their kids. And so we tried very consciously, not just bottom up, what toys do we like, but like top down, okay, we need to find a toy for global citizenship, like where do we find that? And we need to find a toy for empathy, and it was not easy. As you mentioned, part of it you're like, oh well, actually we chose Siggy Kid, and we love their products and their organic plushes, and we because to your point about the loveys, right, that like you create this relationship, and so we talked, that was one of the toys that that did, you know, that we enjoyed having in the shop too. But
yeah, I love seeing all the values and exactly the process. It was more of like a top-down process.
And it was really interesting because we put it up more as part of our design. So the store we thought was very colorful, beautiful, and we wanted the values very prominently displayed, and we didn't expect people would come in to Stanford and just say, I want to buy that art. And so we ended up making for 2 households in Menlo Park custom prints, very large, of those 9 values, which are
great.
They're very beautiful. I was checking out your website and I'm like, oh, I want to get this one for my daughter's room. And I'm like, oh, and that one, and this one. Because they're all, you know, I couldn't pick which value I thought was the most important because they were all so important and they're all so beautiful.
They actually connect in this path, which some people
I
don't
didn't
notice.
notice that.
And actually the path breaks at self-reliance, which is symbolic, because you should be self-reliant from in the little parents are waiting here to see.
Oh, I want them even more. Let's see here. So as a member of the Children's Association professionals that work in this space, we really care deeply about creating thoughtful and entertaining media for children. So I noticed on the Creativity website, I was taking a look on there, and it said that you're creating magical experiences every time. And I really love that. And so I wondered if each of you could talk about what you do, what you look for or what you think about when choosing or designing a toy to ensure that you're creating those magical experiences.
I'll start. So I think that alludes to 2 things, both the level of service that we give to our clients that we partner with, and how each project that we work on is tailored to that project, and each person's putting their heart into that one project. But it also shows just how much we care about launching wonderful experiences into the world. So our founder started the company, our founders started the company 20 years ago, and it was really a work of heart for them. And I see that every day when I'm working with him and choosing how we move forward with things. Sometimes he'll be like, you know what, just change this business term a little bit because I want to make sure that goes to market, and we want to make sure that we're working on that, and we'll figure it out. So I think that that's kind of what's driving a lot of it, and you feel it every day when you're in the office. So we cover a lot of different parts of the product development cycle. I say that it's from idea to factory readiness. So we'll work with partners like Mattel or Hasbro or Spin Master or anyone in the toy space. And they'll come to us either with an idea or with a specific direction and be like, help us execute this. So when we're thinking about the design phase, there's kind of 3 factors that we're trying to come up with. Of course, we want to make sure it's fun because we want kids to want to play with it and have a lot of value for them and the parents. We want to make sure that it's friction-free. So we talked a little bit about the friction of putting together some products and how that was really difficult. And that's the last thing you want as a parent, is to buy something and just have it be too hard to use that either you're frustrated or the kid doesn't want to pick it up and play with it again because it's just too hard to move it forward. And it's funny, we build a lot of interactive experiences that are non-screen based. These are some examples of toys that I like, not all that we worked on. But you have to make sure that they're intuitive. That's the last one that I'll put in. So that when a kid picks it up, you kind of know why it's making that movement, or why the light is going off, or why the sound is happening. And if it grows, which a lot of toys are expected to do now, having a lot of influence in the world of apps, then you're trying to understand why it's doing that, what are the changes, and really notice them. You know, a lot of marketing tends to be around features and about the amount of content that's on there, but if you can't access it or realize that it's there, then what's the point?
That's great, thank you.
I find myself saying this mantra a lot, which I think a lot of people who are involved with like learning products would say fun first, learning second. That if a product isn't fun first, it's never going to ever be educational for a child. And so this was something I would talk a lot about in my office, and we had a very specific way in which we would make product. Before defining anything, we had a bit of a discovery phase in trying to get to know who our target audience is by developmental stage, and let's do a little scan of the research to figure out if there's anything about whether it's the subject we're working on or kind of the learning goals or something we could take away from research before we begin defining. And I think that's important. And one of the things that I have seen, this may be a little controversial, is like the creative process is not a democracy necessarily. I would always make sure my team was maybe 3 people, sometimes 4, and that was it. The more cooks that were contributing to a creative idea, the weaker the idea actually became over time. And have one really strong creative lead with the vision of driving the playfulness. Even when there was a team of 3 that was defining it, there had to be one that was really the owner in driving it. So that was the way we would often do it. But then, my company wasn't making our own products. We were making products for others. And one of the things you learn is that not everybody has a similar understanding of what it takes to make a great product. And that will often include something like kid testing. And you'll often see some companies who are unfamiliar with kid testing leading the witness and creating a really weak product because they want an answer, and they're leading the witness to get the answer they want. Whereas, like, my experiences working with Electronic Arts, for example, whenever we made a game for them, they would do rigorous testing and had a sizable budget to change about 20 to 30% of whatever we worked on. It's like, that's awesome. Yeah. And Sesame was the same way. They'd take whatever at some stage of what we worked on and bring it into a classroom and see, how does that work? And what do we need to change? And, oh, they didn't get that. Or, we didn't expect this outcome to happen, so let's change it. But not all companies get that, the value of that. And it's a real shame because I think I've seen a lot of people spend a lot of money on something that they really wish to break through and be meaningful for kids, and they're just a little misguided on the path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As a former user experience researcher, I'm glad that you brought kid testing up. I know we have some in the audience as well.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. We did a ton of play testing. And we would require our the game inventors to play test first before they even, we made, some of them didn't love that, but it was really important. And we even had people who would video it, and we would watch it to be as objective as possible. And we were always looking for moments of joy, moments of discovery, moments of satisfaction, moments of accomplishment. And if we didn't see those moments, we were like, this isn't working, we need to regroup. And then with the younger the kid, I think there is this expectation of learning. So I agree that like the fun factor had to be there, and the feeling of wanting to play again. That was so crucial. If they just played it and done, then they're like, also that's not working for us. So yeah, I just agree with that completely.
I think one thing I would add is that from the perspective of us having tried to fill this store, and most stores that you go into, they're packed with toys most of the time because people just want to walk in and find something you like, and you don't really know what they're going to like, so most toy people try to fill their stores with as many SKUs as possible. And in this day and age where there's like so many different types of toys, we actually found that the best way, and we see it very consistently also in social media and the brands that do well, is that there's this whole movement behind Marie Kondo, less is more, Spark Joy, and people just want like a white shelf, and they want you to put your 3 favorite toys on it, and then they want to see beyond the like craziness, the 3 things that you love and why you love it and why it's beautiful, even if it's just like this wooden horse, or even if it's just like the plastic, rotating sound making thing. It's like you appreciate the colors and you appreciate the toys, and I feel like the brands that we've started to see do well, whether that's on a social media platform or whether that's even like as an upstart, really just focus on this is who we are, these are the three things that we do.
Yeah. I think that curation really helps
Yeah.
because I'm thinking like often I always go to the toy store even when I'm by myself, and often I'll be looking around at toys and I'll hear someone go, oh, I still don't know what to get this person, and I'll say, oh, I can help you. Do you work here? No, but I can help you. And I think with so many choices, parents just don't know what to choose. So I think that's probably part of it. Like just like I was thinking, like the App Store, they go in and there's so many apps and they don't know where to so they're really looking for that curation. But then also your second point about like they're really looking for things that are beautifully designed as well. And I think just looking at your website, so many of your toys are so beautiful. Yeah, I really love that collection that you did.
I think there's a whole missed opportunity there about curation for many companies, whether they're, whether it's like the Netflix or Amazons or app stores. And this is why sometimes when you get to know reviewers, you're like, oh, that reviewer, I know they like something that I like too.
Yes.
And they're recommending this smaller subset of a larger, vast, noisy space.
And one of the things, this is sort of an aside, not directly addressed, not directly on the question, but we've also noticed that a lot of the toy pictures and in toy marketing materials are beautiful shots, kind of like beauty shots, right, of the toys themselves. You take it from different angles, you have these you have kids interacting, you have a product down with like the hands in it, and while that's interesting, I feel like people are tired of it.
Yeah.
And so the things that we see do really well are where people love seeing, even if it's like an unattractive, messy, real play space. It can be a beautiful play space. Play spaces that do well are obviously really nice, but even if it's just a messy play space, and then the toy is sort of in context, but there's not too much to like, and so they're like, ooh, they sort of go, I know how I want that toy to be in my house.
Yes, exactly. That's really interesting. That's great, thank you. Sorry to turn my computer back on. I know that Scott and Caitlin just recently went to Toy Fair. Hannah, did you go to Toy Fair too? Not this year, okay. And I know that they brought some slides along so they can kind of share some of the trends that they were seeing. So Scott, maybe do you want to
Sure. It's funny. I used to put together these decks for companies I work with about if you're making a product, you should probably know the people who are going to review your product and get to know what they're going to say about your product. So I put this together. These are people, at least they all review in some form or another in the technology space, though some of these people review just pure play and pure toys. If anyone has been to Toy Fair or been in the toy industry a long time, you probably know Chris Burton, the first one right there in Time to Play. Like, he is a master. He knows play better than anyone, and I love. I go whenever a new product comes out that I haven't heard of. I almost immediately go to check out his YouTube channel because he has an inside track of things that aren't released yet, and usually publishes something about it first. And Claire Green, A Parent's Choice. I won't go through every one of them, but each one of them has a very special eye towards play and toys that I greatly admire. And I've just started noticing too, Engadget has done a wonderful job in reviewing toys, and seeing that during Toy Fair, they're always out with the first reviews. I don't know how they do that, but they always are out immediately with the fabulous reviews. So I thought it might be helpful just to see who these people are if you're interested in toys, and you get to know their work and you get to know what they're publishing. And if you're getting ready to launch a product, it's like, well, maybe you want to reach out to them. Maybe you want to get some early feedback and see what they think. Or, they won't pull any punches. If it stinks, they will tell you. If it's great, they'll tell you. But they don't say that often.
They would only do reviews of things gone to market, or would they?
It depends on, anything that's new that hasn't been in the press yet. I mean, everybody loves that. And especially if it's the new darling thing that's coming out. But some people will review anything, and other people will say, I will never review anything with a screen. It's okay if it's a digital toy, but I don't want to see the screen. Or, it changes. Yeah.
Scott, what about Ryan's World? He's not up there.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
Sorry. And it's not an exhaustive list. One of the things that I thought might be worth touching on is that for those that don't work in toys, sometimes it's hard to understand what is a trend and what is good marketing. And I did intentionally leave some reviewers off because they may review for pay. They may have a bias because they work for a company that they're reviewing their own product. I also find that the Toy Industry Association, and please, I'm sorry if anybody's from there, they love all their members, and they should, but that means they also equally love all their products, all their children, and not all of them are created equal. So like I try not to, I see the bias in reviewers for the toy industry. But yes, this is not an exhaustive list. Oh, this is, every year I do kind of a roundup of what I think are some of the most noteworthy tech toys at Toy Fair. In the process, I also see a lot of non-tech toys, and next year or some future year I'll probably write articles about non-tech. But I thought I'd put this together, and I imagine, Caitlin, you might know a bunch of these because her company works on some of them. There's a handful of LeapFrog products and Hasbro products. I think there is just way too many robots, and I tried to tone down the robots, but there are a lot of robots at Toy Fair. I have if anybody's interested, I have a larger deck about this that drills down into each one of these. But I picked just a few on this next slide. The ones that I think are really, Spin Master is really crushing it. They're doing such great work right now. And Juno, my baby elephant, is a robotic elephant about this big with sensors all in the trunk and the head, and you pet it and you can feed it. And there's a video, but we couldn't get the video to work earlier.
It actually is. I think I do have a
Oh, is it?
video. We
Okay.
want to quickly watch a little bit.
It's super charming. And ironically, this image here, I made with the help of somebody on the show floor because they didn't have enough press materials ready. They just came from Nuremberg and it had just been finished, and they said, we haven't even had time to get our one prototype into the studio. Now, sometimes this kind of toys like this would be referred to as a watch me toy, where it gets played once and never played again. But I think there is a super cute element with the sensors that are in it that I think could drive some play. And it's pretty.
Yeah.
Well, that is funny.
What?
Yeah. Well, so Spin Master and Disney don't. Yeah, they don't play that way. But anyway.
My 4-year-old doesn't know that.
Yes, that's right.
It's called drafting.
This one here, I thought it's funny. There's an element of this is just a commercial for like it looks like a TV commercial or YouTube commercial, but very much like Light Bright from long ago, except all the pegs can be stuck together to make a mosaic or some other thing. Now this is like a personal favorite of mine. That doesn't mean it's a personal favorite of everyone else's, but you know, certainly crafting and a new approach to crafting. I think it's very popular.
Those fuse beads.
Yeah,
Like
and you can use other things like that
Oh,
in this too.
that's cool.
And this last one, you know, if you weren't familiar with Toy Fair and you'd walk through like the bottom floor of Toy Fair, you'd see a lot of drones, you'd see a lot of remote control stuff, and it's all from China. And you would think, oh, this is the hot new trend, where actually it's like just a technology that a lot of Chinese manufacturers rip off over and over and over again. And, but this I thought was so clever. There's a lot of kind of nurturing occurring in toys that Spin Master is on top of right now. This is a tiny little owl. This reviewer is from Engadget, and she's got a great film crew when she does segments of toys. Anyway, it's a little long, but you get the owl, and it blinks, and you got to pat it to kind of encourage it and to be bold, to spread its wings, and before you know it, it's a drone, and it flies away.
Oh.
And it's super magical, and I'm like, wow, did that just happen? Yeah, it's in the video. It's a little further in. It's a little further in.
This has got, I don't know if they show this at Toy Fair, but that is actually put on by the Airhogs team.
Oh,
So it's the Airhogs first interactive.
that makes sense. That makes sense because Airhogs is a property of Spin Master, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
And they do
Yeah.
their drones.
Let's see here. Come on. Here we
There you
go.
go.
Oh.
Come on.
Here it goes.
It's a little strange that its head comes up.
Oh, look at that.
But it only does that after you've stroked its head and you petted it and you kind of coo to it. In the sense, it's very darling, you know. Yeah, but that was a surprise. I saw it and I go, nah, forget it. Nah. And then I watched this video and I go, what?
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What about you, Kayla? I'll let you talk about some of the stuff.
Yeah, so we've worked on, I counted 5, maybe 6, Jessica, on the one slide that Scott had that we've worked on. Between the audio and programming and interaction design, we touch a lot of projects, maybe for one of those, maybe for all of them. These are all released, we really only talk about what's been released. So these were all up for Toy of the Year awards in New York Toy Fair. So Pomsies, which is an interactive plush from Skyrocket.
I bought them.
Sorry?
I bought them for my daughter.
They're so cute, they're really good.
She's 20.
Rideables. Rideables, which is Ride on Pony, which again, I never had one of those either. We did a Harry Potter wand, and then Chewbacca, which is a for real item, which I actually brought with me. He's not on yet. Yeah, he's pretty awesome. And it's got tons of sensors, and so just a good example of how interactive toys can feel super magical, and like, you know, different sensors, like if you move him, if he senses like how you are, he can go to sleep. Yeah. This is a good example. So this one actually won. So we added another to our list of, we now have 27 Toy of the Year winners that we've worked on in the lifetime of the history of our company. So I think those were, I mean, Scott actually highlighted a lot of the ones that I loved. I've been super interested, and I'll get to this in, I think, the next slide, in just how kids are playing today. So I'll launch into this a little bit, but kids are not playing how we used to play. They have a lot of different influences. The first one, Lol Surprise, was Toy of the Year for the last 2 years, which is from MGA. It's all about unboxing. It was pretty much launched around unboxing. So kids watch other kids opening toys, and then they want to experience it, and the YouTube hits just keep coming.
And the bigger ones sell out immediately.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, they're adding innovation to the line as well. MGA is a very talented toy company, but the essential play is all about unboxing and finding all these different accessories. And it just highlights the presence of YouTube and how kids are being influenced to buy. So I mentioned Ryan's World when Scott had his list of reviewers up there, and Ryan is a 9-year-old kid who made $20 million a year. So you're looking at the new future here of kids seeing influencers, and that's who their heroes are. Kids just like them. They are paid to play and to open and being extremely enthusiastic and cute. A lot of them, their parents are like video editors or coach them and really help participate in it. And you know, there's a company called Pocket Watch down in LA, and they represent these kids. And there's now a toy line. So Ryan, I didn't put this on here, but Ryan actually walked through all the halls of Toy Fair and saw the toys that were coming out, and he'd be like, I like this one. And they'd be like, oh, would you like to make it a Ryan toy? And all of a sudden, like, it's under his license, and the free marketing on YouTube for his channel, and like toys that I saw in LA Toy Preview where I was like, oh, that's a great game. All of a sudden it's a Ryan toy, and it makes no sense, but he likes it, and so it's something he's gonna sell. So that's the kind of weird stuff that was going on behind the scenes. We do invention also, so we talk like really early about what's coming, and that was something that I was just like, this is a total disruption of manufacturing and how to get things to market.
Interesting.
The next image that I put up here is about the influence of digital. I mean, I think I'll talk a little bit more about the presence of screens and how that's evolved. When I started to work at LeapFrog, it was all we talked about because we wanted to convince parents that there was some good to games that were built around education and had real learning inside them, and we had to convince them that, you know, this device that is tearing your family apart actually could bring you together in the future and have good learning moments. But I just read a great report that Lego put out, which is public, called the Play Well Report. And their new finding is that kids don't really see boundaries when it comes to play. I think what's important to remember is that technology is going to influence the way that they interact with products and the level of interactivity and play that you have inside them. So I think that's why we're seeing so much interactivity in some of these toys, and why you should be looking at what's coming out at CES. Like, I went to CES this year instead of Hong Kong to see how kids are going to want to be playing and interfacing with their toys. So that's kind of leading into the Fingerlings one. This little guy has really changed a lot in the toy world. It's $14.99, and most companies are totally balked at that. This should be a $20 toy, but through very careful engineering and years of work, WowWee was able to get this down to a much lower price. And so now it's kind of dropped the whole market for everybody. So now this is kind of the magic price point. It used to be 25 or 24. And now everybody's looking for this level of interactivity, this portability, and saying, like, how can we create that new phenomenon? And it's super challenging. I mean, we work in technology toys all the time, and we're like, okay, here we go. Let's figure out.
What does it do?
It fits on your finger, so it's extremely portable and handheld, but it's a little monkey.
It blinks, it coos.
Yeah. It moves its head.
Yeah.
It's
It was
motor.
2 years ago, and you could not buy it. You
Yep.
could not find it on the shelf. It was so popular.
I'm happy. Here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you said that was at a $15 price point.
$14.99.
It's also thinking like how attractive it is to parents. Like,
Yep.
if you're like me going to birthday party every weekend, that's a nice price point for a nice
Yeah.
gift.
Yep.
So
With the report that I did for Tech Toys, you'll see that there was one that's over $100, and even those that are floating at $100, I think that's like, I don't know, how much play am I going to get out of that?
Yeah.
You know?
We're just not hearing
Yeah.
about that anymore.
But it's battery operated or not? No?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Yes.
Already brought themselves?
Well, you're not on price point,
Oh.
because at the end of our pop-up, we did a summary for our brand partners, which they really appreciated, but one of the things we talked about was price point. And it's interesting because, and this is not new to anyone, but the occasions which toys are bought around are the holidays, hence 70% is November, December, and birthday parties or baby showers and things like that. And so everybody, it's more of a, I need to buy something versus I need this product.
Yeah.
And so that's why everything under 35 is easier, because it's a non-thinking, okay, well, I have to pick something anyway. And then of course, all those factors we talked about, like Ryan, or like, this is the popular toy, or this is the one that I can see on the shelf, makes a lot of a difference. But once you cross 50, and especially once you get towards like 3 digits, it's really hard.
yeah, I can imagine. I know that you didn't go to Toy Fair, but I still.
Oh, sorry, I have one more.
Oh, you have one more. I'm
Last
sorry.
one is slime. And it can't go without being mentioned. And I think it's interesting to me for a couple reasons, from a design standpoint and from a business standpoint. The first is how disruptive it is, because you can just make it at home. And you buy a couple components and all of a sudden you have hours of play there. And the second is the sensory aspect of it. So we're starting to see compounds and other type of elements creep into all different types of sets. And I think that that's something to be said about like where the future is going, and how parents are trying to attune their kids to be more aware of their surroundings and their touches, more emotionally attuned, ASMR.
I do wonder though if there's slime burnout in the future, because there's just so much slime. So many players are making slime, but they're doing clever things with the slime too. Like there's a package and you unpack it and it's all slime and you got to dig in there and there's stuff in it that you piece together and make something else. And like, that was really clever.
Yeah.
But there is a ton of slime.
Yeah, this is definitely my world at YouTube. I'm very familiar.
Yeah, totally.
With at least 3 of these. Actually, I think this is a good, as I'm thinking about the toy that you said was one of your favorites on the market, is related to slime. I was going to also ask the 2 of you, what your favorite toys are right now and why.
The Aaron's Putty. Do you guys know the Aaron thinking about? I brought some of they. It's a sensory thing. My kids love to collect it. They've added all these little special glitter or light or glows, or my son got a kit for his birthday. He got to make his own design, and I love that it's just so simple. And I like the sensory aspect. So do they. And they also just like to collect it and look at it. Like not even play with it. Like I'm arranging all the jars of it and like tins of it or whatever. So I think he's just was clever. Like he really like took off with it. He jumped on it, and so yeah, put a bunch of it over there.
And I remember seeing
What's the price point?
It's
Yeah.
kind of expensive.
Can you pass them around?
I can't remember. Yeah. And some of them had like magnets. You have to go for your pass around. And they include little like lights and things buried in here. But yeah, it's like at the bottom where it does all these different things.
Your kid let you bring these tonight, or they don't
I
know
just
that?
snuck them out. And this is the one he made one.
It's all research. It's right off.
I feel like they really, because I haven't been to Toy Fair for quite a few years, at least 4 or 5 years, and I remember seeing this line, but it's really grown over the last.
I think he's done a great job of capitalizing on this.
What about you, Hannah? What's one of your favorite toys on the market right now?
Yeah, so the ones that actually we just sort of ended up gravitating to even more amongst the 25 that we chose in the pop-up were this sounds like I'm repeating things that I said before, but we really loved the wooden toys. They're just
I love wooden toys too.
Yeah. Melissa and Doug.
It wasn't Melissa and Doug. They were more like handcrafted wooden toys that were made by families in Spain. And it was in Spain or it was in Russia, and they cut it themselves, they dyed it themselves. And I think the thing that we talked about nostalgia a little bit, but I think, and they were $80.
Yeah.
They were like rainbow slats. It doesn't have magnetic pieces like Chiou. It's just, they're beautiful, they're colorful, and people just wanted to, they were like, well, if my kid uses them, at some point it's not going to be junk. It's not junk if they just stop using it. It's something to like pass to somebody else.
Yeah, and it's beautiful to look at too.
Exactly, and it's beautiful to look at, and so we love that. Or there's the 2 other things I'll mention are, I mean, this is something every parent was so excited about because there's so many of them out there, but scooters, right? Just it encourages activity, and everybody likes going outside. It wasn't one of those like, well, I could have it, but I don't need to have it kind of toys. And so therefore, that also, $130. People were very happy to buy scooters. And the last thing I'll mention was books, and this is actually the area that we're going into because we feel like that's also relates to my favorite toy when I was. But actually, this bilingual book. So when I was in Asia, a good friend of mine, she used to be the head of TripAdvisor China, and when she had her baby, one of the things that she decided to do as a side project was build a bilingual book series for Chinese English, but it didn't have English in it, but it had, for those of you who have learned Chinese characters are really hard to remember, even if you can say it, and so you actually have to have the phonetics, but no Chinese book will have the phonetics because no Chinese person needs to read the pinyin under it, and so she basically built like the Dr. Seuss of Chinese books and had it rhyming and had the phonetics, so even somebody like me, I can speak Chinese, but I can't read Chinese, so every single person who was interested in Chinese language came in and bought that book.
Oh wow.
And so that's actually, so we're working on bilingual books that are paired with a reading wand that read to you, so if you don't speak Chinese well, or you want to get them exposed to Spanish, you touch it, it's read by native speakers, and we're starting with English and Spanish, I mean Chinese and Spanish because that's the 2 more popular languages, but we hope to therefore expand into a library of languages.
What are those called?
Oh, it's a product we're working on, so it'll be called the Happy Reading Wand, but yeah.
So, and I want to ask you another question about your unique retail space, which I know you've talked a little bit about. So I was looking on your website, and you described it as like part home, part museum, part play space, where kids could actually go and touch and feel the toys and explore. And I just wondered why you think it's so important to incorporate play like that into a retail space, because this is definitely something new and something we haven't seen too often.
Well, it's so interesting because everybody says Amazon is taking over the toy world, right? And I think that's because the toy retail space allowed Amazon to do that. Amazon has not taken over beauty because Sephora has made sure that people still want to visit Sephora to like touch, to talk to people, to experience, to like, and so the reason we created that space is even though it seems very obvious, we're like, well, if kids want to play, they should just play with everything, and so that's we try to make it very. We only had 450 square feet, so it was very small. But we tried to make the best of it. And so one side was displays, so you could sort of see everything, right? Everything had its own space and story. And the other side was about interaction. So there was a worthiness tree where kids would write like, I'm special because my sister is pretty. And then they would post that to the leaf on the tree. And then there was another set of all the toys where they could just sort of similar to home play space, just pull the shelf out and play with it and put it back. Or we would put it back. And then there was an airplane making station, so they would there's all these different instructions and people could play with it if they wanted. But we really wanted to make it as if we envision the next play space, given the constraints of the space that we have, we would have loved to have more. How would we build an environment that inspired people to play and stay? And it's okay if you don't buy anything then, but if you love it, you'll tell somebody, and I feel like that is so much more valuable than picking up the
Absolutely. And I can just imagine when my kids were young how much I would have loved to go to a space like that and just, let them play and explore and also meet other parents and other kids. And I think that's so great. I was going to talk a little bit about toy unboxing, but we've already kind of touched on that. So I'm also going to talk about another popular genre I see on YouTube, which is gaming. Also very popular. So playing video games or video game reviews. So I was actually going to ask Margaret a little bit about this, if she could talk about how gaming and video game reviews has actually influenced specifically the board game industry.
Well, it's interesting because I think that people thought, well, when I worked in publishing, people all thought, I remember the CEO of the publishing house was like, when the radio came out, or when the movies came out, the radio, people thought no one would listen to the radio anymore. And then when movies came out, people thought no one would read books anymore. And they think that it's going to take away the industry, but that's not the case. And the video gaming, I think, has influenced the board game and actually helped bring in the Renaissance, because a lot of people just got into gaming. And then a lot of board games caught on quickly, like, oh, we should make an app of our game. So that's kind of like feeding each other. And then when all the Euro-style games came, that also opened it up to a lot of people too, like Settlers of Catan and Seven Wonders. But then there are these people now who, I'm sure you all have seen there are these channels on YouTube that they review games and they also play them. And so you get to learn the rules without having to read the big booklet that comes with some of these more complicated games. And then you get to see the reviews. So do I want this? Do I not? What is this very trusted person, like Dice Tower? I don't know if you guys have heard of that one. I've forgotten his name. The main guy, he's been doing it for probably 15 years. And then Will Wheaton has this show. He was on Star Trek. I don't know if anybody knows who he is. He gets minor celebrities together and they play these games. And you get like the Will Wheaton bump if he likes your game. Maybe like Jake or whatever, but not to that extent. And it's called Tabletop. And so, and then Kickstarter was the other thing that I brought that little game, Exploding Kittens.
number one.
Oh, yeah.
That was a Kickstarter game.
Art.
And he has a new one, I wrote this down because I just looked it up, they have a new one called Throw Burrito. And he has $1.7 million they've raised on Kickstarter already.
Wow.
From 35,000. So I think it's just helping it grow. And you also can go around the game industry and do a Kickstarter campaign.
Well, but they know how to do a Kickstarter campaign. They really.
He was an animator too, right? Like Oatmeal.
Yeah, well, but he happened to speak at another conference about the process of which they did their crowdfunding campaign, and it was brilliant. And at the time, the largest crowdfunding amount raised was by LeVar Burton for Reading Rainbow, and that knocked it out by a couple million when that first came out. And the big focus there, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Please.
Was he said, so many people do crowd fundraising for the fundraising, and what they forget is you're supposed to do it for the crowd. So make it fun for the crowd, and the money will come. And it was a brilliant plan. Every day for 60 days they did something different. They had a great Twitter campaign going on the side too for that. It was a genius. So
Yeah, and how big was their team?
what's that? How big was
How
it?
big
I
was
don't
the
know,
team?
but I mean
Yeah.
it wasn't a couple of
Yeah,
guys. So
it was a team.
But I mean, what did it turn? I think it was 8.3 million that
Wow.
that raised.
Wow.
It was significant.
So I had a couple more questions, but I know it's getting late and I want everyone to have some time to ask questions as well. So I was just going to end by asking you to either tell us one takeaway or something that's really excites and energizes you about the toy industry and makes you want to stay in it. So if we could just go down the line.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who works on all different types of experiences, I had one more slide that had the word fluid play on it, which I got from the Lego Play Well report. And I'm really excited about the fact that kids are not seeing screens or different types of play experiences. They're really seeing opportunities to play wherever they are. I think the reasons why that's come out based on the research is because kids' lives are too segmented. So it's actually a sad thing that they can't have large blocks of open time in order to commit to something. So they're just trying to play whenever they can and grab those moments. But I'm encouraged by the fact that they view all of their experiences as being play related. And that parents can really help to foster that by playing with their kids. And one of the things they've noticed is that, you know, you talk about Exploding Kittens, it's an adult targeted game. The adult targeted board games are really taking off because as parents play with their kids, they're remembering that they also have to play. And so you're seeing this whole resurgence of play and an understanding that, you know, it helps balance you emotionally. It shows you that there's risk and reward to trying new things. You can recover if something happens. You're not gonna cry, Margaret. Or you will. I would probably cry too with my sisters. It's hard. But yeah, like I think it's just reminding us that like life should not be so serious. And yeah, you have to get into college, and bless all the parents who are going through that right now because we have a couple in our studio. But you know, like it's gonna go on, and tomorrow's another day. So that's great.
Whether I work in toys or not, I am always and forever will be fascinated by the creativity that has to occur on an ongoing basis, month after month after month. Like, we were talking about Evergreen earlier, that doesn't happen for everyone, and some people it's like, okay, that didn't work. What are we doing for the next 3 months? What are we, and you know, to make a really great product, you're planning like 18 to 24 months out in advance. And sometimes the serendipity of slime from one company and slime of another company and all coming together in a big slime apocalypse. But I mean, I'm amazed. It's like, oh, I can't wait for what the new Easter toys are. I can't wait for the Halloween toy. I'm so excited because it's all so creative.
Me too.
It's so great.
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like it's such a privilege to be surrounded by creative people, much more creative than I. And also being with the kids. One of the things I was doing for Little Passports was play testing these science kits, which I know nothing about. But the kids don't know me. I'm a total stranger. But the minute you sit down with this thing, they're engaged, they're excited. If it's a good toy, obviously, and they're so open. And they're just like, they're joyful and they're just like happy to meet you and happy to engage. And so it always brings me back to like, oh, what's so great about this is watching them get excited and like having those moments like we talked about. So that's great.
I think I'm really excited about, there's like a new generation of, we talked about the values that we try to promote in the store, but also just in the process of trying to live those values and create or interact with people who are creating toys. I'm just doing small things. When I had this conversation before this panel started about media, and for example, we were just working on our book today, and we were like, oh, the restroom sign is the traditional restroom sign. We should add the transgender label and the wheelchair label, and we should put a disabled kid and not just kids of all colors. And when we talk about our careers, we should put the stay-at-home mom, but we shouldn't call her the stay-at-home mom. We should call her another label. And I think it's really exciting to be able to be in a space to influence people at such a young age with values that are very intentional, where it feels like society is moving in a certain direction.
That's really great. Yeah, one of the questions I didn't get to ask about was about inclusion and diversity, so I'm really glad that you brought that up. So does anyone, we have some time for questions. Does anyone have any questions for our panelists?
I have one about toy trends and what you saw at Toy Fair. If you guys could speak to the trends in how gendered the toys are, if you felt like they were becoming more gender neutral. A lot of the ones that you showed, I feel like were pretty gender neutral, but obviously there's still the pink and the blue aisle, so you'd know if there's becoming more purple.
Go ahead.
I just find most of the younger companies that enter the market are very on top of this. And one of the things I've wondered about, and I'm not throwing stones at the older established toy companies, but they seem to be a little slower to change. I keep hoping for more newer companies to create that gender balance.
I see it also based on age. I think that the younger companies, which are more educational focused, tend to be like preschool age. They tend to be much less gendered now. One of the companies I recently stumbled upon is PieBots, their new company, and they have great robots that are just feel like anybody could pick up. It's about the play experience, not the character and what society brings to it. So yeah, and then I think as you get older, you just naturally start to see some gravitational pull to both sides.
But could I ask a follow-on to that, which is when I was at Nickelodeon ages and ages and ages ago, we were gonna revolutionize the toy aisle and slime and GAC and all of the, you know, we didn't believe in girls here and boys there, and so that was kind of our positioning, and we were talking 1993, you know, the really early 90s, and we felt in the end like it didn't work because the retail wasn't there. There was no place to put those toys, and so there was the boy aisle and the girl aisle, and I'm just curious, is retail, you know, how's retail handling this? You know, is it that there's the robot section, and so you can have, you know, non-gendered robots, but what about the other toy aisles? Like, where is retail at in this, on the spectrum, I guess?
Bankruptcy.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, it's funny, I think I became aware of it in a large way when Tokaboka was crushing it, and their stuff was so gender neutral, and they didn't need a store shelf. And ironically, you know, later then they did licensing and they made their own products, and I forget what it was, like when they cut a deal with Target, you know, and I think Target was a bit more forward thinking too. I mean, compared to maybe a Kmart or a Walmart, where there was the girls aisle and the boys aisle. You know, those changes are slow, but I think they're underway.
And I'm a frequent shopper at Target, and they had the Tokaboka kind of right in the middle of both the boys and the girls, kind of bridging the two, so it's nice. Yeah.
I think it's interesting, like you bring up a good point where retailers are trying to solve this, I think, but they think in terms of certain play patterns, like there's the small doll aisle and then there's the board game aisle, and so who plays with small dolls, it just tends, like that's different to them from action figures. But you're starting to see that change with superheroes like Captain Marvel coming out. The content is being more gender neutral and diverse. And so I think now it's like this question of like a puzzle piece, like where do we put it? And will the kids be able to find it?
And I can't speak of other retailers, but one of the things when we were contemplating, you know, expanding and doing a bigger format was we would have we organized it because we only had 24 toys in a very distinct way. They were all mixed together, and we consciously didn't put tech toys all together, but we would have organized it into like almost like you mentioned museum and home, where it would look like a home space, and where you would just display the toys the way you would display them at home, and therefore it would actually be more by age versus gender. So, you know, preschool people and format toys are all in the floor area, and then you would have a small shelf area, and then you might have a gaming or a puzzle or wherever, depending on how you would organize it. And I think that's the more intuitive way that retailers should be organizing their toys, because that's how we would like to find them. Everybody who came in would say the first thing was, well, what age are you looking for?
Could you talk at all about toys for older kids and play patterns embedded in toys for older kids? It feels as though we've been talking about very young kids. What did you see at Toy Fair, and what do you hear? What are the toys for older kids, let's say from 10 up? They still play.
They do.
Video games.
Physical games?
That's good. I keep thinking of like Thames and Cosmos. They have a lot of, you know, like construction kits for 12 and older, like maybe they're robotics, or maybe it's chemistry.
Rube Goldberg kind of kits,
Yeah.
you know, construction.
That's one part I've always been challenged by in the play world, is like the teen market. I mean, if it's not video games.
Or it's action, like the Razor scooters, like the stuff where you need a lot more motor skills, fine motor skills to work it, and then skill action, definitely skill action, like showing how your development, like it's stacking games and stuff like that, and being able to spin. I went to GDC and every person had a yo-yo, so there must have been someone giving those out, but everybody, like we're all adults, they're all walking around with yo-yos, and then of course board games.
What's old is new again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious if any of you guys can talk about how you're seeing AR and VR coming.
It's not here yet,
No,
but it's behind the scenes.
You know, I thought Lego's marketing effort this year was fantastic. And I thought they've been pushing their software side a lot in the last 3 years, and they've done a fabulous job. At the end of the day, I keep thinking, is it going to succeed? Because the play pattern feels still a little awkward with, I forget what the name of their new AR thing is. And this is one of the problems about technology in general with play is there's a greater degree of refinedness in the play now, but in the earlier days, you know, leading up to whatever the shiny tech object is, there's a lot of forced play that isn't fun. And I wonder with the latest AR thing that Lego's done, if it's a novelty that isn't going to be used because the main play is still construction and pretend, I think. And let's see, what were some of the other AR things I saw? You know, I saw many more AR things by following from afar at Nuremberg and in London than there was in the US, and even Hong Kong had a ton of AR. Like there was a bow and arrow AR kit, which felt like something that WowWee or Spin Master would do from years ago, but it never made it to the US. I'm not quite sure. I sometimes say it feels like an answer looking for a question. That it isn't fully baked yet about what the experience is. We haven't found the killer app. And let's just say somebody does. I know there's a lot of VR research going on at the Stanford VR Lab and other AR groups. I've been following AR more because of what it means to adults and ultimately what it could mean to kids. But those experiences are not meant to last a long time. It's unhealthy. You know, you can't keep something an inch from your eyes for a long period of time. And I think people think that, you know, we'll be walking around with these headsets and teachers will be replaced by kids wearing something in front of their face all day long. It's like, that's not going to happen.
Can I add to that also?
Yeah.
I think AR is closer, and certainly at GDC, you're starting, like, Apple introduced the AR kit a couple years ago, so the software is starting to become there. It was just not there before. And so I did see a couple of products which are taking a physical sort of playset world and overlaying technology to that. So the play is not dependent on the AR, but it's enhanced by it, and you can have a takeaway element to continue to play in that world. And that was a really beautifully executed line, and I haven't seen something that good in a long time. I started working in virtual worlds at Moshi Monsters, so we were always looking for ways we could bring that play to other places, and our solution ended up being that there was like the physical side and there was the digital side, but now that AR sort of enhances the world without removing you from it, I think that we're getting closer to finding that killer app.
Angry Birds AR is coming out soon, so that might be one that people get onto.
David Kleeman's doing some interesting work on VR and AR and kids that you might want to.
The dubbing artist.
Yeah, dub it. And Jeremy Balinson, like you said, at Stanford.
Yeah.
He's another person doing research with kids. And if anyone can go visit his lab, I did it, and it's such an amazing experience. I've actually done it twice. Yeah,
that would be,
honestly, it was
that would be great. Yeah.
Where is it?
It's at Stanford.
And you write Jackie Bailey?
Yes, and that's actually a student, or a
She's
previous student.
at Austin now.
Yeah.
So there's another one there. I had a question, I remember about more than 20 years ago, the Fisher-Price Pixel camera that recorded on a cassette tape.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything remotely like that?
Funny, I don't know if it was Fisher-Price or Mattel, they're both owned by the same one. They had something called Juice Box that had to be like 12 years ago. It was slightly different. It was pre-iPhone, but when toys still could have screens. That was quite a novelty, and I remember they had a custom recording feature to it that was not unlike what you're talking about.
I had a second question. We have to end it, and now we're doing more time. Sorry, passing.
Katie?
I don't know when they're going to come clean. Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank everyone again, all the panelists, for taking the time out of your evening to come do this. This is really great and really fun for me. And again, everyone also for traveling down here and everyone at the event. So thank you.
And if you want to sign up for
Yeah.
membership,
And if you
now,
haven't-
get on our mailing list.
If you haven't signed up, I also want us to all thank Katie,
Yes.
because she made it easy for us to have one of our events in the South Bay. So thank you, Katie.
And by the way, just any of you that are here, to the people that were pointed out before, if there are specific events that you want to do, or a panel that you want to organize, or a field trip, like the studio you just mentioned, please, come speak to us. Like, we're in a collecting of ideas mode. And/or if you're interested in volunteering, come see one of us.
We have a list of volunteers.
Yes.
We'd be happy to add your name.
What?
I field trip that.
So what exactly was it?
Oh, it's the virtual human. Yeah, it's virtual. It's at Stanford.
What is called the virtual?
Virtual human interaction. Thank you. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I think he would. He can't do it. Someone in his lap would take us on a tour. Yeah.
So is there somebody who knows him and be willing to say I'll help with that? All right, Jennie Ito.
See, somebody volunteered. It's an example.
Anyway, so thank you guys so much. And look